Hello folks, here's a quick video on the muscles of the arm. So the muscles that occur in the brachial region that act on the forearm, right? So again, thinking about origin and insertion, this means that if they're acting on the forearm, they're going to be inserting either on the radius or ulna, and they're going to be originating somewhere here on the humerus or perhaps on the scapula above. Okay, so we'll think about, this, we know this is a hinge joint, right? At the, where the humerus and ulna meet. So we only got one type of motion, just monaxial motion there. So this joint is basically just capable of flexion and extension. So we're going to look at the flexors and then on the back at the extensors of the forearm. Okay, so here is our biceps brachii, probably the most iconic arm muscle of the arm. And there's two pieces to it. So there's the long head and the short head of the biceps brachii. This just refers to kind of how long this tendon is eventually that inserts or that originates here on either the coracoid process or just above the sort of superior border of the glenoid fossa. Right, so that is our biceps brachii. It's the most superficial muscle. Here you can see this on the coracoid process, and you can see this one. This is the one that goes in that intertubercular sulcus or groove and reaches over the top to originate on the top of the glenoid or the superior border of the glenoid fossa. Okay, so that is our biceps brachii. Let's take our biceps brachii out and we'll see another major flexor of the arm. This is the brachialis, right? So there's that word again, right? This is the brachial region. We had the biceps brachii, now the brachialis, with its origin here on the humerus, kind of the anterior and more distal portion of the humerus, and then inserting down here on the ulna, whereas the biceps brachii inserted on the radial tuberosity. This is instead inserting on the ulna. So you can see this is a kind of a broad flat muscle. It's just underneath the biceps brachii. This is called the brachialis, and it's the tuberosity of the ulna is where this one inserts. This is another major flexor of the elbow. Um, okay, let's see. Let's rid of that one and we'll see kind of a weird hidden one. Well, not hidden, but it's just a muscle that's even further down. Here it is, the brachioradialis. Now this one, you can see the insertion point is way far away from where these others inserted further up, right? But its origin is it's back here on the back of the humerus, right? So the origin of the brachioradialis, another flexor of the elbow, is just the lateral condyle of the humerus is not far down here, right? Lateral condyle of the humerus. So it's just a little ridge above that. And you can see it does wrap around the back. Well, that then comes all the way to the front and runs right along the radius, right? There it is, finally inserting via a tendon right about the styloid process of the radius. So it inserts very distally on the radius rather than proximally the way that those brachialis or the biceps brachii did. But this is another flexor of the elbow, so that's the action here. You shorten this muscle and this whole elbow flexes, or this whole forearm flexes at the elbow. Okay, then let's go to the back and we'll look at the one big extensor of the arm, the triceps, right? So I'm going to pull off the deltoid so we can see this a little better, and maybe even our teres major and minor. Okay, there you can kind of see that it has an insertion on, oh, let me get rid of the infraspinatus. There we go. Right on the inferior border of the glenoid fossa, right? So this actually has three heads to it, this triceps brachii. There's lateral head. This is the long head. And then there's a medial head in here that we're going to have to take this off to actually see. And I think we might have to even get rid of the latissimus dorsi to see where it inserts. Okay. So this is the triceps, the origin, a couple different places. So we've got part of it originating on um, the superior, but kind of lateral margin of the humerus. It's kind of not any especially large bone marking to see right there, right? Then we've got this other one on the inferior infraglenoid tubercle of the scapula. Maybe you can see that, but it's basically on the inferior margin of the scapula, inferior margin of the glenoid fossa of the scapula. And then the medial head, well, before we go there, let me just tell you that all of these pieces, right, the medial, the long, and the lateral head, they all insert here on this big bony olecranon process, right? So they're all having the same insertion point on that olecranon. So it's a really quite a big muscle. It's got 3 pieces to it. They all insert on the olecranon, and they're all involved in extending, extending the forearm at the elbow. Now let's see if we can get rid of these two, and we'll see the medial head. Medial head is actually, this is quite short, right? So there's the medial head of the triceps. It's originating on the humerus, and it's posterior, definitely posterior humerus. Yeah, you can see that right on the back, posterior humerus, and then inserting on the olecranon of the ulna. And this is again extension for this muscle at the elbow. Let's just check out Get Body Smart and see. There's a couple of other actions, for example, of the biceps brachii. So here's our Get Body Smart. There's our biceps. Now let's look at the attachment sites. I just like how they clear out all this muscle stuff, and you can see the coracoid and the supraglenoid tubercle, and then the radial tuberosity. But it's a very weakly, it can flex the arm a little bit, so this whole arm can be flexed a little bit, but it's quite weak. It doesn't have a very good mechanical advantage, but it's an excellent flexor of the forearm, right? And it even helps to supinate the forearm. So if you're in a prone, yeah. So if you're in this position and you contract that, it actually pulls and puts you on your back, right? Puts the hand on its, it actually pulls and puts the hand on its back, right? It supinates the hand, or the forearm and the hand. And if you think about it, that makes sense, right? If you're in this position and you contract the biceps brachii, it's just going to do that. But what if you think about rolling this over, right? We've always talked about anatomical position, but what if you're like this, right? Then where's your radius? Well, it's gone ahead and turned over, right? So now it's kind of over here. So if you shorten that muscle, it's going to pull the radius back over. It's going to supinate the radius. So that's another important job or important action of the biceps brachii. Let's also take a look at that. Let's see. Yes. Let's take a look at one that was a little weird. Well, the brachioradialis was a little bit challenging to see there on the back. You can see it now here, how it's kind of wrapping around the back. And this one makes it look pretty tight there. Now we're pulling off all these. You can see it wrapping around the back of the humerus. And look at that. Oops. You can see the insertion there on the styloid process of the radius, and then it's wrapping around the back of that humerus, and that's the origin of it, right? An insertion there on the styloid process of the radius. So another important forearm flexor. Okay, I think that's it. This is nice actually to see that the triceps. You can see each head here. Oops. And the origin and insertion, right? So maybe a little bit easier to see it here. Origin and insertion, and that's the lateral. And then if we look at the long head, we'll see that insertion, of course, is the same, but then the origin there, it actually shows it a little bit below the margin of the glenoid fossa, but that's the origin in same insertion point. And then that medial head, this one wasn't too bad. I think we kind of got a pretty good look at this one, the insertion point here, right? Origin broadly along the posterior part of the humerus, kind of in the mid shaft, and then inserting on the olecranon, right? Okay. Please let me know if you have any questions about this. I'll see you again in a future video.